Now we want to have some studio discussion here. Let me bring back our guest, Mr. Liu Yufan, former Vice President of China Institute of International Studies. And also joining us live from D.C. is Dr. David Dollar, Senior Fellow with the Foreign Policy and Global Economy and Development Program at Brookings Institution. Dr. Dollar, thank you so much. He has also formerly served as the U.S. Treasury Department's Economic and Financial Missionary to China. Thank you for joining us both. Now, the first question goes to you both, but let me first start with Dr. Dollar there in D.C. Now, this treaty took many years in the making, 21 round of talk, tremendous efforts has been put into this to make it happen. And I understand by now there are over 3,000 bilateral treaty of this kind in the world, but not this one. So when you talk about bilateral investment treaty between the world's two biggest economies, what comes in your mind? What does it mean for China and the U.S.? Dr. Dollar.
Well, this would be a really big deal. This would be a really big deal. The United States is overwhelmingly the largest provider of direct foreign investment in the world. China is becoming a very significant supplier of direct foreign investment to different countries. But so far, there's not that much cross-investment between the two. In particular, only 1% of U.S. foreign investment is in China, which is surprising given China's important role in the world. So I think there's a lot of potential for U.S. investment to increase. In the other direction, Chinese investment is increasing pretty rapidly into the U.S., but Chinese investors definitely have some concerns. A bilateral investment treaty would create a more stable environment. So this would really help the economic relations between the two, and I think there would be spillover effects on the whole world economy.
And Mr. Liu here, does two sides' expectation match up? What does it mean for China in this case?
China, as we heard a little bit earlier, that the negative list is one of the issues that both sides are just arm twisting with each other. But eventually we have to reach an agreement so that the BIT would be officially signed as quickly as possible. I would be excited if the deal could be signed, before President Xi Jinping concludes his state visit to the U.S. But I think basically from China's point of view, I was on the Capitol Hill for 4 years. I knew how it is difficult. I would like to point the one article is very critical, I think, to the Chinese minds. That is the security review mechanism on the U.S. side. As I look at it, it's the most discriminative on the Chinese and other countries which are under the so-called socialist system, and so to speak. And also the higher benchmarks, which will be at par with the U.S. stages of economic development. And that means it will be a little bit higher than the Chinese capability to jump and meet.
Let me give Dr. Dollar there a second to respond to Mr. Liu's comment. What do you think?
Well, I think it is a big leap for China. China is quite open to foreign investment in manufacturing, but a lot of service sectors are closed. You mentioned transportation and logistics, telecom, also financial services, healthcare. So China has quite a few closed sectors. I think China is ready to open those up, put its state enterprises into a competitive environment. I think China would benefit a lot, but I agree that it's a bit of a lift. China might want to negotiate some kind of phase-in period. So agree to open up most of those sectors, but have perhaps 3 years to phase it in some areas where the government's worried about the effect of the competition. So I think there could be some practical compromises. And then I agree with Mr. Liu that in the other direction, Chinese concern is mostly with the security review. It only affects about 100 transactions per year, but still it's a concern to Chinese investors. The BIT would create a more stable environment. Many of the deals that have been reviewed for security, for example, Shuanghui bought the largest U.S. pork producer, Smithfield. That really shouldn't be going to any kind of security review. So I think with the BIT, we'd find that more transactions are just not even brought into the security review process, and that would be encouraging to Chinese investors and good for our relationship.
And here in China, Mr. Liu, the BIT agreement is expected to have profound impacts on upgrading certain industries and facility reform in certain sectors. What sectors do you think will see the most profound impact?
right at the moment, the Chinese industries are just beginning to move out of the so-called command economy. China has been in the market economy for the relatively short period. Simply said, for many industries, they are yet to get used to the market rules vis-a-vis the U.S. experiences. So there is the great discrepancies in this regard. But I think to come back to your question, which are the areas that China needs to be careful in opening up to foreign investors? Posts and telecommunication definitely is one. Transportation is the second. And the third one is the industries that are closely related to national defense. I think these are the things the US side is also watching very carefully. These are the three areas, I think, because they all relate to the protection of the intellectual property rights. This is, of course, China is still in the learning curve yet. I'm sure my colleague, Dr. Dollar, would agree with me here.
All right, we're running out of time, but thank you so much. Dr. Dollar joining us there in Washington, D.C., and Mr. Liu Fa joining us in Beijing. Appreciate it.